But let's start back in 1990. At that point, the Soviet Union collapsing, Gorbachev agrees to allow the unification of Germany. And he gets promises, not only by James Baker and George H.W. Bush, but by all the leaders in Britain and France and NATO and European leaders, that NATO will not expand 1 inch to the east, one thumb's width to the east. And he's getting this assurance over and over again, this ironclad assurance. However, he trusted the West, and he never got it in writing. By October of that same year, the National Security Council memo reveals that US policymakers were already discussing what they called, quote, sending a signal to the new democracies of Eastern Europe of NATO's readiness to contemplate their future membership. We didn't even wait a year before we betrayed that agreement. In 1999, NATO expanded first to Hungary, Poland, and the Czech Republic. They took advantage of Russia's weakness. They knew they could run roughshod over Russia. After the Soviet Union collapsed, Russia was in a period of extraordinary decline. And a lot of American economic advisors went in there and put the Russian economy through shock therapy. When Putin gets in there in 2000, he's able to restore some pride as well as the economy, and eventually is able to rebuild the military as well. And he thought that we were going to be friends and allies. There was even talk about Russia joining NATO at certain points, crazy as that idea was. But then in 2002, the US pulls out of the ABM treaty. We abrogate the ABM treaty. 2003, the US invades Iraq over the strong opposition, not only of Britain and France, but of course, Russia. And Putin is getting the idea that the US is not going to be a friend to Russia. And so at that point, he begins modernizing his nuclear forces after the US pulls out of the ABM treaty. But then recently, when Zelensky has turned against his initial friendly policies, but then when he reaches out toward Russia in a friendly way, the hardliners in Kiev start come down on him. Then he talks again about Ukraine joining NATO. And meanwhile, he's asking for more lethal aid, which Obama refused to send, which Trump campaigned that he would not send, and then changes his mind in 2017 and starts sending lethal aid. But now NATO is having trainers inside. More than a dozen NATO countries had military trainers inside Ukraine. They start sending more and more lethal arms. And even Turkey, a member of NATO, sends these drone missiles that were being used very effectively. And so from Russia's standpoint, for a lot of reasons, this is an absolutely untenable situation. And Russia did what people predicted Russia would do. They put 120,000, 130,000 troops on the border with Ukraine and in Belarus for these war games that are going on now. And it's a very, very tense situation.